You ready? Sure? Sure. All right. Good evening. We'll begin the meeting. It is Monday, February 10th of 2025. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission. We do have a quorum, and we are in compliance with open meeting laws. We're going to skip the minutes. Those will be on at the next Plan Commission meeting. So we'll go right to the City Council Representative Report.
And looks like at the last council meeting, we had first readings of 02-2025 and 03-2025. We'll have the second readings of those tomorrow night, and we approved R04 of 2025.
All right, any questions about any of that? Hearing none, we'll move into our agenda. And the first item is 401 South 5th Street. Director Munz Pritchard, you want to lead into this one?
Sure, we have the applicant here, so I'll go ahead. I provided just information on the property. Essentially, it is an existing non-conforming structure on an existing non-conforming lot. The property is zoned neighborhood business. The applicant, well, this is, I threw it out there for you guys last meeting, and we're going to discuss it at this one. So the landowner would like to pursue a 2-flat to be used as a short-term rental, such as Airbnb. A 2-flat is permitted in the district. However, this is because everything on this lot is not conforming. It doesn't meet minimum lot size requirements, and it does not have room for parking. If he were to look at doing upgrades to the building for commercial use, I don't know how easy it would be to get ADA compliance because of the the setbacks in the front yard and side yard. So just more to put that out there. So basically there's 2 directions that we can go. The first is a planned development, and the second is a variance. With the uniqueness of the property, if the Plan Commission wants to preserve the building, a planned development might be the direction to go. The planned development would need to add flexibilities for the lot size and the parking requirements. And I think the application, so normally when we're looking at planned developments, we're asking what they're going to bring to the table for us. One of the compromises would be to use the design guidelines to make the building look more like what the original building was. But with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant who is here. And you'll have to step up to and turn on the mic. But the other information that I provided in this was just the purpose of the zoning district, so you guys had it, so it does fit in with that area. And then additionally, the definition of the 2-flat, and then also a substandard lot, which I apologize, I probably called it a non-conforming lot, but substandard lot, and then the non-conforming structure regulation. So you guys just had those definitions.
All right, so Brian Rickles is here, and you might recognize Brian. He's done at least one other project that I know of in Stoughton. So,
yep.
Go ahead.
I guess what the mayor was just referring to, I guess, is I had, for the last few years, I had fixed up what used to be called the Elsing Secondhand Shop. Many of you probably know it, 421 East Main Street. So that was my project for the last 3.5 years or so. Very different, but just to mention that. And then I purchased this building on a whim, went on the market. It's just across the park from my other building, and I thought that would give me something to work on when I was ready for it. And now I guess we're getting close to that time, so it's time to figure out how we're going to use it. I'm just figuring this out, but I guess as Chris said, what we're seeking to make this work, it would be planned development. It's a unique historic building. For the last, I want to say 17 years, it was just kind of used casually by some photographers for their space for taking photos, senior photos and things like that, I suppose. I just started spending some time in the building, asking, I didn't have a plan when I bought it necessarily, but I just have a penchant for old brick buildings, I guess, and thought we'd figure it out. So the zoning, yeah. Neighborhood business, I guess you guys are quite familiar with what that means. I brushed up on it, of course, and try to make sure we're going that direction to comply with what the neighborhood wants to be, I guess, with its use. And yeah, it just, I have lots of notes, and a lot of these things are to provide maybe, I don't know how much resistance I'm going to get from you people, or a lot of support, or some kind of tepid reaction to the proposed use. But with its location being just behind the fire department, really close to the Opera House, what I always refer to as the town's crown jewel, it's what kind of brings people to town, if they sell out, it's what, 500 people, right? So it just seems like that would be a shoe-in use in my mind. As Chris also mentioned, like, it's on the corner, it has it's kind of built so that the basement level is sort of halfway underground, and then like the main floor is half a floor above ground. So for that reason, both entrances could never become like ADA compliant if you wanted to have a different, more permanent, more public, like retail space, for example. So that's one thing I think about. And, I mean, it's funny, we talk about, I think of it, the short-term rental concept as kind of a hybrid type use. I mean, it's residential, sort of, which is to mean that we're making sure the building is habitable, so someone could overnight in it, right? So it has to have some toilets and a shower, but yet it's not like a single family or two flat home where someone would live permanently. So it's different. Is a small inn on the corner, if we call it that, like considered residential, or is it considered commercial? And these are things you guys know better than me, but it just seems like it does have this kind of hybrid type concept of use. And so yeah, specifically, I guess we're talking about it's non-conforming in the lot size to be residential. The lot is 66 by 66, which is, my calculator tells me, 4,356 square feet, which I guess at 5,000 is what they normally look for residential, which is exactly 12% short of what they look for, just to put numbers to it. And it doesn't have a driveway, as we know. It doesn't have a driveway, or rather a garage that the driveway would lead up to. It is what it is and has been for a long time. The home to the east was built before this building. The home to the south was built in 1920. So nothing has changed in our lifetimes that, was someone buying the property, and certainly not me, obviously, dicing it up and making it just a little bit too small to be considered for residential. So maybe I'll just stop there and see if you guys have any questions or thoughts on why it may or may not be a good candidate for a short-term rental.
And I'll just share a couple other things. At one point, when this place first went on the market, the city actually looked at it as a possible place for the fire department in case we wanted to have interns there that could live there and then come across the street if there was a fire or further training. And we just decided it wasn't really the right fit for what we were trying to do there. So we did take a look at it. The other thing that makes it a little interesting is, Brian mentioned, there's no driveway or garage. There is a municipal lot. I think you can just see the edge of it on the screen here. So potentially between the limited street parking and that municipal lot, it could be accommodated for parking that way. And as you mentioned, it's basically one block from Main Street, and from the Opera House, you can see it from there. So it would be advantageous for people that want to stay overnight for a show or just be downtown for setting an eye or anything else that's going on. So I think that, potentially the use could be good, for the right patrons. Wouldn't be for everybody, as you mentioned. ADA is certainly a challenge there. not really sure what else it could be used for, but, you know, we did take a peek at it. Josh was in it, our fire chief, at one point and looked around, and I think the building's in pretty good shape overall, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got good bones, as I say, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a very open floor plan, you know, on the main floor, so, but also, like, the basement is sort of set up, which is another thing that makes someone think of residential, or at least as a domicile for short term, is that it's kind of set up like a flat down there. Like, it used to be an American Legion that's for several decades back in the days. So they have like I don't know, I call it a neutered kitchen down there, you know, where they used to have donuts and ham sandwiches or whatever. There's no plumbing. Like, I mean, you can get plumbing there, which, you know, will be something I will be striving to do. But there's a bedroom downstairs, a small bathroom, and again, a living room and what looks like a kitchen. So, you know, you already sort of just start thinking about using it in that way. But
So I guess my initial question, Chris, would be is if he was to use this something other than residential, or is there any other zoning or building codes that would kick in that Brian should know about kind of at the front end? I think you're here just to try to get feedback and see what is doable and what would be supportable and what's not. Is that accurate?
yeah, for sure.
So I don't have our building inspector with me, so don't quote me on some of this, but normally when you start making modifications to a building, you have to, at a certain percentage, you have to bring it all the way up to code, right, with ADA and all that fun jazz. You know, so if he starts making major modifications in the building, that's going to be a trigger for that building. Too flat doesn't trigger the commercial use. This is a weird area of town. I mean, not in a bad way, just, you know, it's older, pre-regulation. If you look at the block itself, I think there's 4 different zoning districts on it. Like, we've got industrial, business, you know, yeah. So I think really what it comes down to is like, so I'm going to just speak very frankly with you guys. So if we wanted this to be in compliance, chances are he'd have to tear that building down and rebuild either in the footprint where it could be ADA compliant, and or if it wanted to be a 2-flat, he'd have to tear it down and put it in a 2-flat with parking. So I think really what the question is for you guys is like, if you guys want to keep that building, you know, then we need to look at what uses we can get in that building. Because that's, I hate to be that person, but that's really, you know, there's no parking attached to it. So if, for example, a 2-flat is permitted in that district, but you have to have parking. And normally we'd be looking at a 10,000 square foot lot minimum. And this is for each unit. This isn't even close to that. You know, he was like, what should I do here? I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
All right. So, Commissioner Bradford, do you have some ideas?
Well, first of all, I love the building.
Same, yeah.
I think the idea of bringing it back, if that's within, you know, a way we could do it would be cool, because it was a church. That's why it doesn't have a garage, it doesn't have a driveway, doesn't have a lot of bathrooms. I mean, it's the way churches are built, right? And so, you know, I do think the B&B kind of idea, Verbo, whatever, is good. So if you envision it that way, because I haven't been in the upper part of the building, I've been in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many rooms or suites would you be looking at could actually fit with you doing some work in there?
I'll start by saying that the building looks a lot more vertical than it really is in practice right now. I mean, it was obviously a church that had a vaulted interior, and now there's one bedroom upstairs, which you can see from the 5th Street side, and then that little turret is sort of, you know, just attic space, and the rest of it is all attic space. I mean, The windows on the main floor, imagine about a foot above that. In the room inside, there's a drop ceiling that looks a lot like this. So just to get, so that's to give you an idea of how much room is.
So it'd be 2 suites.
Um,
One in the studio, kind of one in
Yeah.
the studio and one on the main floor?
I
I think Chris has the answer because we've been talking about other
Sure.
buildings. I know the answer too.
Yeah, as poor Tim has had to hear several times in the last 2 weeks, if he goes over 2 units,
Oh, yeah.
it now
I was
becomes
about
a
to-
commercial lot.
Okay,
And he
if
has
it's
to
2, he
meet.
can get 2 in there.
Well, that's all he can get.
Yeah, if you
is
get
two.
3 in there, you're talking sprinkler system.
Yeah, that's the magic
And
number.
it has
right.
to meet commercial, and it's gonna have to go to the
Okay.
state for review and approval, and there's a whole slew of stuff, and that's why I get really adamant about nothing will ever go above a 2 flat for existing.
Well, I see this, especially if you take out that regular ceiling and actually have that vault and whatnot, chandelier. I see you've also got Laguerre weddings.
Yeah,
That'd be a great,
right.
Yeah.
for like a honeymoon, type venue, as well as that would give you more time during the year that isn't, set in the Mai or
Sure.
Opera House.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it might be, and it's in the summer.
yeah,
So that might give you some things where, because they're booked almost every weekend.
For
So
sure.
I would think that something like that, so is the reserves, which isn't too far a drive if people wanted to come back into town.
yeah,
So I think that gives you, because you're gonna have to, obviously, if you only have kind of one big suite on that first floor,
Yeah.
and then one downstairs,
right.
you've got to get your income out of that.
Yeah, to be honest,
Okay.
one thought I had too, which seems like a relevant time to mention, is that, like lower unit would be one, which you'd enter from the north side door, and then, I thought that the other, the main floor and the upstairs could be almost like a little modular, meaning like if there was like 2 or 3 people renting it, they don't get access to upstairs, because I'm not gonna like, wash the sheets on that bed, for example. I feel like a lot of Airbnbs do that sometimes. Like if you have like 5 or 6 people,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah,
but
you
it's
could
still,
rent the
it's still
whole
2
building.
units, but
Yeah.
like one is a little bit more adaptable for the number of people, if that makes sense, so that's,
And the other question I had is, you trying to do like historic preservation on this? Is this one eligible to be designated as anything? I don't know the answer.
I don't know the
Is
answer
that something you've looked
either.
into yet, Brian?
I've not.
I think it would help your business. Whether it's, not exact, maybe P's and Q's, but to keep the actual existing building in its shape and try to preserve as much of it as you can, I think would actually help you as a business person.
Yeah, I have
So-
no, the outside's in pretty good shape, and it used to have the spire on top, and these beautiful glass windows, but, those days are long gone, and it's looks a lot like it has for just like the
Yeah,
longest
it's a
time.
pretty building.
And it just, I gotta re-roof it so it's not leaking, and paint some trim, but the outside's looking pretty good. The last owner did some good landscaping, and I would certainly keep true to the, historical style on the inside. I don't know as much about the official, label of being a historic property.
And I
but-
just bring that up now
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
if that's something that you wanted to pursue, the tax credits,
Mhm.
you would want to get going on that earlier than later because
Right.
you wouldn't be able to start the work until the tax credits are awarded, if it's eligible and if you chose to go in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't know if you necessarily have to,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's in the historic district.
I don't believe it's in the historic
No.
district, and it's
Yeah.
not a landmarked
Behind it.
building.
Right.
Yeah.
But if that's something that you wanted to investigate, we could connect you with the right people to do that with,
Yep, appreciate it, yep.
and just at least check that box if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think your main purpose here tonight is the use. Does anybody else have any thoughts about the use of it or what he's suggesting?
I'll just say, I'm okay with the idea of a 2 flat, and the planning director had suggested that, we negotiate, if you will, to make the building look like was originally. That point I would disagree with. I don't think you'd want it to look like it did originally, looking at the photograph. It would be confusing, I think, architecturally, functionally, to have it look like a church. And I think it looks pretty cool as it is right now, as a older historic building. So that's my general thoughts on it.
So just to clarify that, I referenced our design guidelines that we have for the historic buildings. So does that mean it needs to be brought up? It's just like, hey, these are the recommendations for these areas.
So you're
I don't
talking
know.
about like material and things
Yeah.
like that?
But I think the thing is that normally with these overlay plan developments, so like this is how this is going to go, is if this is the direction that you guys are going to give him, then he has to get the information together, and we want to know what kind of information you guys want provided. So I'm guessing that you guys want to see what the inside is going to look like, all of that kind of stuff. He'll have to go through the architect step by step. That would then get brought to you guys. It would go through the plan development, and then it would also go through an SIP with you guys as well. So
Would he need a conditional use for it?
no, because it's a plan development. It's going to be an overlay plan development, which I swore I was not going to do any more of these, and here I
Well,
am.
I think it's one thing if it's
So-
new construction, but
Yes.
if it's existing, I think it's a different animal.
This is a weird one, right? Like, and I think at the end of the day, if you guys want to keep this building here, this is the direction that you need to go. And that's ultimately what you guys need to answer, so.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Go ahead, Commissioner
Thank you, Mayor.
Tilson.
Watch a lot of your buildings, know a lot of the stuff you've done, so respect that. Yeah, I know. Ho, ho, ho.
No,
So it is.
That was
It's-
flattering.
I think,
That was
yeah,
the
I think
face
that's
I was
you've
making.
done a lot of great things with a lot of great buildings. My question, Airbnbs, I know I'm you're the youngest one on the committee or the newest one on the committee, and I don't think I've seen a lot of Airbnbs fare very well in the downtown, because there was, what was that, 419? The weird, the house one that had the shop underneath it, and they tried Airbnbs, and my thought is keep it a professional. Is why not a professional building? Because a lot of old churches I see that get bought and sold out, and it was the old VFW way back in the day, but architect firms love having those big historical buildings, and they set up their firms in there. Is that something that's crossed your mind, and maybe try and set it up for a professional suite building instead of Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, it's something crossed my mind. I mean, part of me wants to say, yeah, you just saved me $100,000. I can just put up a sign and see who wants to rent it as, office or something like that. But I don't know, I was, believe it or not, I arrived at this use not by asking myself, how could I maximize my profits or whatever, For example, I sort of asked, I don't know what Stoughton could really use in this area, and that's what came to mind. I mean, I can see a pretty complementary relationship with the Opera House. I mean, Bill, who knows, some of the big acts, he could just put that into their payment, have a place to stay, and that would help draw a crowd, or the best bands back and things like that. But I mean,
Well, most of the
clearly
bigger
it could be-
bands have buses that they drive up and stay there for the weekend in, or
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Airbnbs, I guess here personally, I haven't seen many of them do well, especially
Really?
the ones in the downtown.
I think if you lock it into the wedding.
But that could be. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not here to say the business. I'm just
Oh, yeah.
saying, to me, I would think a professional suite might be of that, because that can't become a duplex. Am I right on that, Chris?
Yeah, so if it's a plan development, any
Yeah.
changes that they make would have to go through you guys.
No, I appreciate the
So-
mention, and of course, it could be so many things. I mean, that, like I said, sounds so much simpler in so many ways. But I guess I'm sticking with my plan that I've come to talk about. Yeah, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So where does the ADA come in? I mean, is that you know, if somebody, I mean, how compliant does it need to be, and what kind of businesses would not be able to use it? Could it be
So-
an office suite? Could it be a small restaurant? What could it be?
So my understanding, and again, like, I want to make this abundantly clear, I am not the building inspector. But when you start making, so like, if your building is existing non-conforming, so like, let's say it was built in I think what you're,
1902?
like, well, whatever, I was
Oh.
thinking like the ADA compliance actually is quite a lot newer than you would think. It's like 93 or 4. So if your building was done pre that year, you don't, you know, and it's just sitting, right, and being used, and there's no major modifications made to it over a certain percentage, you're golden. The second he starts putting in certain level of modifications, you have got to bring all of that up to code depending on what you're touching. So, and I don't think that percentage is very high.
So I think what I'm hearing is maybe if you haven't done this already, maybe we can connect you and have the building inspector come down there and look at it. And maybe even the fire inspector too, if you decide to go the commercial route, they would have an opinion on that. And maybe have them do a walkthrough and see if there's anything from their viewpoint that for or against what you're proposing. And that might be something that you could do.
Well, and that's the other part of it too.
Chris can help you arrange that.
Yeah, so that's the other part too. So if you start doing a certain percentage of that, then you have to bring it up to fire code. There's other, it's not just ADA compliance, there's other commercial codes depending on what you're doing that you have to bring it up.
And I think you kind of know what happens when you start peeling the onion based on your last project.
Right.
Yeah.
So we probably want to get in front of as much of that as we can, because especially in these older buildings, you don't know what you're going to run into. So I think that's one thing we can do. I'm not really hearing like super, opposition to what you're proposing. Obviously, everyone wants you to be successful, so there's always going to be concerns, but that's ultimately your business decision. Unless anybody has anything that you're really leery about, I think you have some information, more than you came in with, information-wise.
Sure. Yeah, when Chris says that I should be wary of doing modifications of a certain percentage of, I don't know, cost or space or whatever, and that would require me to make it ADA compatible, then we're done. Like, I'm a guy with like $12,000 in my checking account with like really good equity and credit, but I can't. It was a deal, in front of my other building, we couldn't make it happen, and so I know enough that there's no space to get ramps in there, and boy, yeah, I just wasn't trying to. Yeah, we'll see how deep we get into this onion, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or concerns or questions for Brian?
No,
Go ahead.
just as far as interest of preserving the building, I think this use would work for me. So hopefully it's not an infinitely deep onion.
Right.
I do know, just, I'm not trying to sway either way, but the one business that I know, and actually the mayor can probably speak more about this, is Bees on Main. That second floor is an Airbnb.
Yeah.
So, but I also know from what you told me, she put like blood, sweat, and tears into that place.
She did, but I also know that she's been, having good success as far as the use of the building, because of all the activity on Main Street. As you mentioned, the Opera House. I think somebody else mentioned Laguerre. There's the Chorus House. So, and then there's the other Airbnb it's actually a bed and breakfast right over by City Hall.
Right.
And that one has been there for a long time, so they must be doing okay. And that's a different situation, because I think you have to live there for a bed and breakfast. And
Yes.
obviously you're
Right.
not talking about doing that.
Yeah. I thought the word on the street was that we needed more, Airbnbs and short-term rentals, but
But that's another area that you can research.
yeah.
I mean, and I know that the folks that are running them are approachable, so I'm sure
Yeah.
they would be more than happy
Yeah,
to talk to you as long as you don't steal all their business.
right, yeah. This guy will be talking about it next month, maybe, perhaps.
So do you guys have a direction for him? Would you like him, what would you like done here? Don't ever be talking. Go ahead.
Okay.
So I'd recommend going and getting the building inspector, kind of going through what the plans are, you know, to see that if it's going to be more than what he thinks, you know, tearing down a wall, or where does the building inspector say that that's where it's got to be brought up to ADA compliance or certain commercial level compliance. And I'd chat with him about what the plan would be. And reviewing that would be, in my opinion, the next steps. And then if he still wants to go down that route, can come back here and we can fill the stuff out, and wants to change his plan for the building. But I know it's going to look beautiful, so I do appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Right. Commissioner Bradford, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna say was initially you asked us, was it gonna be to go plan development or what we were gonna do? And I, just like the other places that we've done plan development recently, to kind of make it work on older buildings or old developments and get them within compliance so somebody could do something and they don't just sit there. So I think that that's the direction that we need to look toward.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thanks for being here.
Of course, yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll get with the inspector and I guess the fire department, and then,
I can try to schedule something for you.
yeah. Just don't want to invite an architect over until we, have proven that there's a chance of it going that direction, so, thanks for your time, appreciate it. I'll appreciate it, thank you very much.
Okay, and the next item is, number 7 is Forward Development Group request to extend a CUP and a CSM approved for the apartment project located at 2605 Cromwell Court. So this one here, you might recall, just over a year ago, or about a year ago, they came here and they approved some multifamily behind the True Hotel. There's 2 lots back there, and I think they're really looking for more time. That project was bogged down a little bit because of some park dedication that had to happen, and at that point they really just didn't have the parkland to dedicate, but they still want to move forward with the project, so they're here tonight really asking for an extension. Anything you want to add, Director Munz-Pritchard, and Connor's here too if we have any questions.
No, not really. So essentially what we're looking at, we're gonna have to renotice it, but I'm gonna look for direction from you guys first, and then I'll notice it at the council if that's the direction you wanna go. The only thing that I wanna note is that, essentially this would fall under the multifamily residential now, which the front yard requires a minimum of 100 feet of, street frontage. And because of that, it didn't meet the minimum street frontage requirements, so they had to amend the CSM. Wow, I totally forgot what that was called for just a split second. The CSM. So I'm looking for direction from you guys on this. If we want to go ahead and push it through, it'll just essentially extend what you guys have there. Because this is a plan development, it will have to come back to you guys for review and approval on the SIP. I was about to sound like a mom and say, do I make myself clear? But do you guys understand what I'm saying? It has to come back to you guys for review and approval of the design.
And the notice would be the public hearing that would be required because of the zoning, is that it?
Yeah, so what it was approved under is a plan development, which we would keep. So I just want to say this, you guys are going to just see echoes of this.
Yeah, I think it was approved under the conventional. They came as a plan development and then they came back.
So I'm showing, and then all of the paperwork is attached. That's why it's 127 pages long. So I
Yeah,
can look
the
through it
first
now.
time they came as a plan development, and then they came back with a new plan that met the zoning requirements, as I recall.
So like, there were no flexibilities added.
No,
No.
it was the conditional use with it for the 4 buildings.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then we were able to comply with conventional ConnerNet before development group. Thanks for having me. So we were able to make it work conventionally with that conditional use permit. We're still able to make it work even with a new MR zoning district, but that's where the CSM was revised slightly to increase that street frontage to 100 feet, which was a total of like 200 square feet, which is a very small area, like smaller than this area in front of us here tonight. So that would keep it under conventional zoning. So I don't believe we'd be going back for a planned development. We
Okay.
want to keep it as conventional as possible.
So this is what I would do, because I wasn't here during a lot of this getting passed, is that I'd want it to come back to you guys just for review and approval of what was passed initially with the minimum requirements. Does that make sense? Because I want to make sure that's what, because I was still finding it as a planned development, and I want to make sure everybody's on board. So that would be my recommendation for this.
go ahead.
Always the one to jump in. So, let me understand what you said, Mr. Mayor. You said that they have not resolved any of the park dedication for the housing and all that's out there now?
Yeah, so as part of this, what they did is there were 2 lots, and they rezoned one of them in order to have one big lot to do the multifamily. And
No,
then
I know what that project was.
Okay.
I'm just saying the dedication.
So
of
before they
parkland.
could actually move forward and pull a permit, they'd have to dedicate the parkland or money in lieu of. And at the time, the city council wanted the parkland, and they didn't have parkland to dedicate. That's still something that they would have to do, and I believe you guys understand that. We've
Yep.
had those conversations. We've actually are looking at options in order to accommodate that. So they can move forward, so we're not back here a year from now extending it again.
And that's my concern, is that, I mean, Connor, how many times have you been here for different, reasons with,
Well, this would be the 3rd time on this one, because it was planned
well,
development.
within the development. Yeah, what I'm
that's
saying
why
is
we want to
within-
keep it conventional. We're not
within
asking
the
to change the
development,
plan
but-
at all, just to extend the approvals.
I feel like, since I've been here, I mean, we've tried to work with you guys on all pieces of this project. But it really distresses me, frankly, to hear that you guys haven't gotten this parkland issue resolved. And I'll tell you right now, and it may not sound fair, okay, but I'm thinking, if you guys can't get that done, I don't know that I want to even talk about anything else. Because I think, you've been out there on the whole project now, long time, in my estimation. And yeah, I know you've sold a lot of homes, I know you've gotten a lot of commercial in, so, I feel like we need to get this park thing resolved.
And part of that is we need the project extended or brought up current. So the approvals, if we wanted to dedicate parkland tomorrow, say, we couldn't do that because the CSM needs to be reapproved. So by getting our entitlements back up to date, that allows us to have a lot that we could then record the CSM, take care of the parkland that it's related to. So it's kind of chicken or the egg. We need to get the approvals re-updated. That way we can do those things. Makes it easier to do those things once we have the parkland. So I guess going back to that time at the end of 2023, project was approved, and there was a hang up with getting the parkland recorded at that time. We had requested the fee in lieu, and then essentially we weren't able to record it at that moment. Now we've solved how to do that. So by having that, ready, we know how to do it, or we have the ability to do it. So now we can get it approved and then move forward with that. But just need the approvals extended to do so.
Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? So I think, if I'm hearing a couple things. We have to have a public hearing, which we could do at city council. So you guys have a couple options. You could either have them come back next month, or you could approve things contingent on some of the things that would bring back, or confirm at least how it was approved under the zoning code. And then the parkland, is something that would be required to be dedicated. So we would look to them to provide us a plan. I think we've talked about at least 2 different options that I'm aware of. I'm not sure which one you landed on, but I think we want to sit down with you guys and have a conversation unrelated to this project, but also does include the parkland dedication piece when you guys are available. So I don't know how you feel about moving forward tonight, or if you'd prefer to do some more work and bring it back, or...
Well, we've got 2 things. I think if you guys are okay with moving forward with the CSM, we could do that part of it if that's what's holding up the parkland, and then we can revisit the conditional use permit. I honestly am looking for direction from you guys. There's a reason I didn't notice this, because I didn't want to notice it without knowing what you guys are thinking on it.
As far as lead time, is the CSM the same or different than the conditional use?
No, they're 2 separate things. So we've got the certified survey map, which is essentially a lot line adjustment at this point, because it's moving that lot line from the north area to the south, making this area larger. This is one of those 2 that it's just a weird spot, and I don't know what you guys envisioned besides multifamily residential in here. So there is something. I'm getting the point from Phil. He's doing the pointing.
Hello.
Yes. So that was a question that I was going to have for Connor was, has there been any, and I know you were here and didn't want to change these approvals or anything, or for a different plan, but I am wondering if there had been any consideration to revert back to what you guys were originally planning at this site, which was, I don't know if we were calling it expo space or a meeting or convention space type thing. Has any thought there? Has anything, because I think the term used was, I don't know, financial things changed or the outlook had changed for that, but just asking.
It's a good question, and it hasn't come back around right now. As you may or may not know, the hotel still isn't performing extremely well. So if we wanted to go back and ask for more funding to build an expo center, that wouldn't be an option. We wouldn't really have anybody that would be interested in doing that. The intent was that the expo was going to help weekend stays. Weekend stays are actually pretty strong. It's the weekday business travel that's the struggle, and the expo was intended to bring in weddings and things like that. And as kind of was already mentioned tonight, the weddings are strong. So we still don't think that the use that we're hoping to extend here for another year is the right use. We're not looking to change the site plan at all or anything like that. So I feel like one of the things with us coming back is things changing, and really we just need more time on this one. But back to your question, it's still not something that has come up with a lot of, that I think that could work now. It still doesn't work, unfortunately.
So the question, Chris, so the public hearing, is that for the CUP and the CSM, or is it just for one or the other? Or is it for both?
I cannot remember right now. I think
it's at least for the CSM, isn't it?
Yeah. So.
Do you know, Connor? I don't remember.
Off the top of my head.
No, I don't either.
Hang on.
I know a plan development needs a notice, but I don't know about a conditional use permit.
I don't think it does.
I don't think the conditional use permit
it's not
does,
a
but I think the
zoning.
CSM might.
Yeah. So I think, if you wanted to move forward with the CSM and get that rolling while we sort out the conditional use and the zoning that was actually approved, you could do that. And you could, at least get that process started. It wouldn't get to council until next month. anyway, right? By the time you noticed it, I think it's, I forget which class notice it is, but it's at least 2 weeks, if not 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check, I'll double check with Rick on this.
Okay.
Because I'm looking through and there's a lot in these files, so I apologize. Yeah. But I think if you guys are okay with it, I think approving the CSM would be okay now, and then bring this, I'm gonna start calling them not by the certified survey map now, if that's the direction you guys wanna go, and then we can bring the conditional use permit back next, to the next plan commission
I mean, they
meeting.
literally can't build until they're both approved anyway.
Right.
And with the certified survey map, it's just getting that process started sooner than later, so they can at least move forward and, you know, get to a point where they can bid it out, basically, but they wouldn't be able to start it until the conditional use was,
Resolved.
yeah, which I
Well, and
don't
I'm
think it's gonna
looking,
be a big deal to get it resolved, as long as they've got somebody ready to build. I think that's the biggest question for me. Do you have somebody, you know, ready to build this time? I mean, I knew you did before, and it got delayed, which caused them to move on to whatever else they were going to do. How are you positioned this time? Do you have somebody?
Yeah, we're positioned better than before. We have the parkland piece ready to go, essentially, where we know how we'd want to handle that. The builder's on board as well. We would still need to finalize the debt and equity raise for it, but at least 3 of the 4 pieces are together, being if we can get the entitlements extended, the parkland would be resolved, and understanding that we have a construction pricing that is reasonable. So we would have to finalize the last piece of it, but even moving forward with the CSM is helpful, because then we can cross that hurdle of the parkland dedication, which is one that was kind of the hang up last time. So I think we can get there on both items, but moving forward on the CSM at least is good.
Go ahead.
All right, if this is going to move the parkland dedication forward, then I'd say let's go ahead with the CSM, and let's come back to the conditional use issue.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Farrell. Any discussion on approving the CSM? And that would be contingent on, well, the council ultimately will have to approve it, so. Any questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. And anybody opposed? That motion carries, and then I guess we're gonna sit on the CUP for now.
yeah, I'll bring back and write a report for the conditional use permit for the multifamily residential on this lot, looking at it from like a fresh perspective, if you guys are okay with that, so.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here. Let's see if we can get a meeting scheduled
Yeah,
here
that sounds good.
sooner than later.
Perfect.
And we can finish up this and then talk about the other project that you guys are working on.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks.
I'm here a lot, but I feel like I get to know you guys now, right? So, thanks.
At least it's not as late tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The next item, number 8, is the Pocket Neighborhood Overlay District. And this is something that Chris has been working on for a little while. I'll put up on the screen here so you can follow along.
I'm about to be real obnoxious. Are you guys ready for this? Did anybody read any of that stuff I sent you? At the last plan commission meeting, I had the draft ordinance, and then I sent 2 of the documents home. We're just informational on them. Did anybody look over that, have any questions, or did they like what they saw? I'm kind of trying to read the room here, but I'm not great at it, so.
I only have one question, and it's only because I've seen other pocket neighborhoods. So what I'm understanding is this one, it looks like you have setbacks. You had that setback rather than the, what do I say, the walkability factor, you know, where you'd have the house right up sort of against the sidewalk and then have a rear common area in the houses. It looked like it was a little different than that, that you actually had kind of a normal lot, 0 lot on the back. and there was more frontage in the, and maybe I read it wrong, but I was reading, you know, the different requirement things, and it looked like you were saying, okay, let's say, I'll just say, I don't think these were the numbers, but like 100 setback in the front. But then in the
was
back,
10.
I didn't see property in the back.
Yeah,
Was that all common, or was there like a setback from whatever park was gonna be there? Or did the houses just open onto the common land?
Yeah.
How did that?
So this is what I have, and it's actually number 6 under the pocket neighborhoods. So we have yard requirements. So we have property adjacent to the development site 10 feet. Adjacent buildings 10 feet except setbacks from the garage may be 5. Front yard is 5 feet to the porch, 5 feet to the building of a max of 18 feet in width, 10 feet to the portion of the building wider than 18 feet. In a pocket neighborhood cluster, the front yard shall be the side facing the common open space where dwelling is a cluster also has a face to the street. It could be considered a front yard. So it is trying to address that. And then side yard, 5 feet except setbacks for attached dwelling units may also be 0, so like a duplex. Provided fire separation requirements are met for corner lot locations, one side may be designed as a side yard. Rear yard is 10 feet or 5 feet, but provided that the privacy between the dwelling units is maintained.
From the back door of a person's property. Sorry, from back door of a person's property that was part of the pocket neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
How many feet is private property before they get onto the common area? 10 feet?
I would say rear yard 10 feet or 5 feet provided the privacy. So 10 feet, but they could do a minimum of 5 provided there's some kind of delineation for.
Okay, that's where I thought it was that was the thing. I just thought
You thought it was too
10
close.
feet. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking at a court, I mean, in my mind, I'm seeing how much would you have to have like a standard patio or a courtyard, and then you transition into the common area, and I can't imagine anything smaller than 10 feet
Okay.
to give you just some privacy. Because
Yeah.
there are smaller homes, and it's a compact neighborhood, and so I just thought 5 feet was too small.
Okay, so on the rear yard, remove the 5 feet and keep it 10, is what you're saying. That's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Let's see.
There's one other question. Are you looking at the garage actually being part of the person's lot, or are you looking at garages off to the side of the common area? I've seen it both ways.
I
That's
kind
why-
of struggle with this
Okay.
personally, and let me explain that. So ideally in a pocket neighborhood, you probably would have more of a cluster of garages and walking. But like anyone that is a parent that has carried groceries in or whatnot, and then on top of it, we do live in Wisconsin and not in Florida, having the convenience of being semi-close to your house when you're doing those things in the winter is really nice. So that's where I struggle with what we're talking about right here. And I do have, like, under number 15, it does talk about parking, so it's detached garage services, multi-dwelling, also shall be off an alleyway with limited of 5 single-car bays.
That was my question, Chris, should we even have that in there as an option if?
Yeah.
'Cause
I mean, I
can
personally
see-
struggle with this for obvious reasons, because I think, you know, when you look at pocket neighborhoods, who are you looking at? Well, probably younger families that are trying to get their foot in a door for a new house, or maybe somebody that's downsizing. And I am not of retirement age, but I do worry about falling. I'm not gonna lie, I do. Especially when it's slick out, and if I'm carrying stuff in from my car, the closer I can get to my house, in some ways, the better. So if that's an area that you want me to really go in and try to explore, I have no problem with that. I also would love suggestions.
Anybody else have any thoughts about this, or, and you know, there's really no rush either. If you know, we don't have to take action on this tonight, but if it's something that you think needs some suggestions, we're open to them.
I just think that when Chris came on board, we talked about, we weren't gonna be this like, oh, you could do this, or you can do this, or you can do this, and I just think the more we look at it and narrow down and say what's best for our citizens, and then either a builder accepts it or they don't. I mean, it's not, you know, helter skelter.
Yeah,
'Cause
then
honestly, it's cheaper to build a cluster of garages, and you can sell the homes cheaper without a garage on property. I mean, because you need to do the lot a different size and everything. So I think if we're going the direction, and I get all your arguments, and I think they're good ones about a garage, then it ought to just say that the garage needs to be part of the house.
one of the things we're looking at doing is we've been talking with some folks through the county about doing like a land trust. So we think that this might be an option if we were to go in that direction. There was some county funds that were set aside for some nonprofits to expand those opportunities. So we're looking at this as being one of several ways to accommodate folks in that situation. So we really kind of wanted to have some criteria, so when all the rules have been explained for the land trust, then we can understand whether or not that program is a fit for what we want here in Stoughton. Not to say that it's only limited to a land trust, but there's going to be some limitations on what builders are going to want to build right now. And we've already seen that. You know, they're not building small homes right now. They're building expensive homes, or they're building multifamily. So that's one of the ways we think we can maybe enter into this type of a market is through something like that. But we at least want to have some standards ahead of time, and they may look at them and say, well, we might need to tweak this in order to accommodate us, and then at that point we'd have to figure out how you feel about that. But we want to at least have a starting point, and maybe it'll be a finishing spot, who knows.
I like the idea of this and the concept of it, you know, considering various different, you know, variations to how this could work. But the three things that popped into my head when I was looking at this were and I forget what it's called, the development on South Street or on Dunkirk Avenue.
Sure.
I forget. No.
No, you're thinking down by the river, by the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, by
And
Dunkirk Park.
It escapes me right now what those.
Elvinstead?
Elvinstead, is that what it is? Elvinstead?
The apartments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, kind of like a amalgam of the Elvinstead and Veneval, and then looking at like how the East Side Park is, although like condensed East Side Park or shrunk East Side Park neighborhood with that style of houses built around that Central Park area. And I was like, well, this could, you know, I liked how I could see how this could possibly work as another variation of a different thing like we have in those other three examples, if that makes sense.
And they even have bigger developments. In places I've lived, they use this within a larger neighborhood. When you're talking about the building for development, like they might have a small village home, you know, pocket neighborhood over here. Then they have bigger homes or medium homes or multifamily, and then they'll have another one of these little pocket, you know, so it makes it look like a really pretty, but diverse neighborhood. And they work that way too, because then costs can be put over the larger homes as well as the smaller homes. So.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'll make a couple changes to this. If you guys see something that you want me to look at or change in the meantime, shoot me an email. I'll start looking into it, and then I'll actually, at the next meeting, I'll go through it line by line with like a PowerPoint presentation. depending on how hefty our next meeting is, which means it could get kicked to the next meeting. But the thing is it's on the radar. So I just want you guys to know, so.
Yeah, if you have any thoughts between now and then, just send them to Chris, and she can incorporate that into her presentation.
Something else, another example just popped into my head. It's almost like it would be a planned Peteville instead of an unplanned Peteville like we have now.
All right. And we have a number of future agenda items.
Yeah, so I'm just, yeah. And then there's gonna be one more that's not on this list maybe, that I found out about today, because today was the deadline. So the first one is a conditional use permit at 1114 East Main Street potentially. So I hope that's just putting stuff on your radar, okay? So we have reinspection fee ordinance. So essentially that's going to be an ordinance that allows us, if we have repeat violators, instead of handwriting out a ticket, it will be reinspection fee that will then go on the tax roll for that property that's habitually violating. This is what we used in Whitewater. It worked well. I don't see it having to be used here often, but it would be nice having something on the books. So that's one of them. Permit extension ordinance. It happens, somebody is working on their permit and maybe it takes 1.5 years instead of a year, and we're talking like single family homes and stuff like that. It gives the option for them to extend their permit instead of having to reapply. This is kind of housekeeping stuff that Shar, the new building inspector, has caught. And then that's the same with that amendment of the 10-2 building regulations, campers. It has to do with state code. It's not that we're going to suddenly start permitting or not permitting campers. It has to do with what we can review for state code. And she's been catching stuff in our ordinance that we're just trying to get updated. So it's, and there's actually markups in the packet that will be brought back. If you look, they're pretty minor. So the changes that are pretty minor. The next one is a conditional use permit at 2801 Bluegrass Drive. Those that are on council, this is the JT Klein location. So yeah, that's what this one is, and it's for an increase to an existing plan development. I think they might run it through as a conditional use permit. I'll see what they have turned in. I haven't started reviewing it yet. Quite frankly, we've been very busy. So, and the third one might be a potential zoning district for the RDA site, but we'll see. We're going to start the process of reviewing that this week. I know that you guys want more on the agenda next week or next plan. Is there anything else you guys want me to look into? I'm being actually serious. We don't have to do it at the next meeting, but is there anything else you want me looking into?
All right. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jordan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.